Hi, I'm Ben Gilman. You are watching Enter Stage Right, where it is all about theater. In this episode, I will be talking to some of my theater role models who have the same passion as me. Let's go explore their theatrical journey. Hi, I'm Ben Gilman. I am back at the Wellesley Theater Project Black Box Theater, and I am joined by
David Wright, music director.
Thank you, David, for being here. We just had a few questions for you.
Absolutely.
First, can you share a bit about your background in music and your journey to becoming the musical director at Wellesley Theater Project?
Well, from a very young age, as my parents would say, I learned to sing before I learned to talk. So I've been singing my whole life. I've been in theatrical productions my whole life, middle school and high school, through college. And then somewhere in college, I started to take more of that creative backseat. I started assisting music directors, peeling people off from productions that I was involved in, that I was starring in, and working on music as sort of like an assistant. And I kind of got bitten by the bug. I was fascinated by it. I love, one of my favorite things is conducting an orchestra and being part of a pit. So that side of it really bit me too. So from a very young age, I've just been obsessed with musical theater.
It's been a lot of years, I was a high school theater teacher for 36 years.
Yeah.
And when I started, my theater career started when I was in the 9th grade.
Wow.
And the 8th grade, the drama department came over from the junior high school where I was, from the high school, and did some scenes and talked about their classes, trying to get kids to take the class.
Yeah.
And I guess it just sort of struck a nerve. So I started taking drama in the 9th grade. No one in my family had ever been involved with theater.
Wow.
Whatsoever.
Wow.
I don't even think they had been to a live stage production. My first show to be in was The Miracle Worker.
Oh, wow.
And I played a blind child. A big role. I was on stage for a minute, but I went to rehearsals a lot. I loved to watch everything that was happening from the front of the house to the back of the house.
Yeah.
But I remember my father came to see the show, and not being a theater person, he said, "You've been coming every day to learn what you did. You couldn't do that just without any rehearsal." I was like, "Well, Dad, there's more to it than just walking on." But from that, I had a pretty extensive career in my high school, and we were a mediocre department.
Yeah.
Okay, we made a good showing at competitions. Didn't win a lot, but we also were not last.
Yep.
And so I was able to do a little bit of it all, from running lights to being on stage, props, whatever. I never did anything with costumes. But then I went to college and decided to major in theater.
Yeah.
And went to a teaching school. And so there, they don't prepare you for like a professional career.
Yep.
They prepare you to go in the classroom and teach. But what they didn't prepare us for was that we had to do everything. That the high school teacher, the junior high teacher, they have to do the lights, the props, the sound,
Of course.
the costumes, the makeup, direct, print the programs, write the program, everything.
Everything, yeah.
So when I got into my first production, I was like, okay, where do you usually get your costumes from?
Yeah.
And they're like, we don't know. Okay, we need somebody to make costumes. And they're like, so I went to the homemaking teacher, who happened to have 2 of her children in my program. So she helped me.
Yeah.
And she taught me how to sew. From that, one thing led to another, and the program started building. And in a matter of, I was there 14 years in Texas teaching.
Wow.
And went from I guess, the bottom of the barrel program to one of the top in the area. And my last year in Texas, my play actually took first place out of all high school productions, 4A high school productions in the whole state of Texas.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I left with that, you know. And then when I got to Florida, I tried to do a little acting in Orlando, and then decided to go back into the classroom.
Yeah.
So I worked with a magnet school, and I was actually the technical director for a couple of years. And then I went to my own school and just built a program through a lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
And that's where Ben was in my program there, Ben Rush. And he helped me in every field.
Yeah.
He grew up in the theater. His first play was Annie at a community theater. His mother and I were in the show. I was also directing the show, typical community theater. His sister was in the show. And so we had to stick Ben somewhere. He was like 2 years old.
Oh my gosh.
So we put him in scenes with street people, with the, but so they could help watch him too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's been my life now, theater.
It's amazing. That's a wonderful journey.
Thank you. When I taught, I also performed at night.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of community theater in Florida, in Central Florida. Wow. So I'd leave my rehearsal to go to a rehearsal that I was in.
Oh my gosh.
And a lot of times Ben would be in the show. So we spent a lot of time together. Yeah. My daughter growing up grew up mostly in Texas, and she and I did community theater. Yeah. So we had that same kind of relationship. Wow. I would do I did civic opera as well as theater. And I remember there were times where we needed someone to go around with hors d'oeuvres at a very classy gathering of people. Well, they put her in a costume when she was like 10 or 12, and she would go around. I mean, any place we could find, we would use the family. My wife, and I actually met my wife when I did high school theater. Wow. She was in a play that competed against one of our shows and beat us, and she got Best Actress for playing Mary of Scotland. And I was running lights for everybody backstage. Yeah. And our light board was run from the wing so I could watch very closely the shows too. And that's where I first saw her. Wow. So, and then we ended up at the same college. And that's when we started dating, when we were in the same theater program.
That is a wonderful story.
Yeah. So theater the Rush family has had theater all the time.
I started theater back in high school. I was in shows. I took a couple of theater courses, and then I ended up directing a show my senior year of high school. And so then I went on to college, and I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. I didn't know that I could do theater as a career. It just seemed so unrealistic. So I went to college for psychology, but then when I got there, I joined the student theater group, and I did shows with them, and I was president of their student club board, and then by the time I was a senior, I was interning for the theater department, and that's where I tried production management and stage management, and I just kind of fell in love with it. I love performing, but the behind the scenes was just where I felt at home.
Yeah.
So that's where that all began. And then when I graduated from college, I was just trying to find a job. I didn't know what I was going to do, and I was like, if I don't take a risk and try doing theater right now, I probably will never do it. I'll just get involved in something else. So then I found an internship at Wellesley Theater Project, and I just was like, I'll try this for the summer, and I've been here ever since, and that was 8 years ago.
Wow, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes, Miss Alexa was actually one of my mentors during all of the different shows that I assistant directed. She taught me how to use all of the different softwares that I use still to this day. So thank you very much for that.
Of course, you have a knack for it.
Thank you. What inspired you to pursue a career in musical direction, and how did your early experiences shape your approach to working in the theater?
Yeah, like I said, I was always fascinated with the music side of being in musical theater. I have 2 left feet, so a dancer I am not. I do like direction. I've done that before, especially when the music is such an integral part of a musical. thinking of like operas like Evita, things like that. I directed and music directed that in college.
Yeah.
So from a very early age, I was fascinated with the musical aspects of musical theater. It's so important to the storytelling.
Yeah.
It's just magical. So yeah, from a very early age, I think I leaned toward that part of musical theater production. And then in college, I was auditioning for theater department shows. I was not a theater major. I was a psychology major.
Wow.
And I noticed, at least the college that I went to, that theater majors were cast in the musicals. Even though, maybe there were people who should also have been involved, who loved theater, wanted to keep doing theater as a form of art and expression, but maybe were accounting majors, but still wanted to be involved. But they were not given, casting preference when it came to the shows that the college would officially put on. So I actually, with a couple of other friends, my freshman year at Northeastern, I started the first ever student-directed, student-funded, student-produced musical theater group.
Wow.
And we were funded by the school from the student activity board funding. We did Little Shop of Horrors, we did Rocky Horror, we did Evita, we did Into the Woods, and that organization is still it is still going today, 20 years later. Wow. So I'm exceptionally proud of that. And yeah, that's when I sort of said, well, I'm going to put on my own shows. I'm going to music direct my own shows. I'm going to bring theater to people who love to do it, but maybe it's not their major. Maybe it's not what they're going to leave college doing, but they just love to do it, which is kind of my story.
Yeah, that's really amazing.
Yeah.
I was not a sports person. I was the mascot for my high school because it would get me into the football games free. But I didn't want to play football or baseball or any. Sports was the least of my interest. And so theater, I seemed to fit in. I found a place.
Yeah.
And it always amazed me that good theater classes accept everybody. And
definitely.
you have all kinds.
Yeah.
And that was something that I've had parents tell me that would come to some of my rehearsals when I was teaching, and they'd be like, your kids are such a hodgepodge of everything, every kind, and how do you get all of that mix to come together to do a show?
Yeah.
And I think the bottom line of that is that we respected each other. We respected the work we did. And my philosophy was always, if the kids are going to put in 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, long rehearsals on weekends, then I owe it to them that the production is good.
Definitely. Yeah.
I get so put out by going to high school productions or community productions, and part of the set falls, or people don't know the lines, or their things just happen, and it's like, if you'd worked on it, if you'd approached it differently, even if it happened, it would have been handled in a more professional way.
Yes.
My motto for my high school kids was professional theater on the high school stage is what we strived for.
That's great. Yeah.
And with all that, my alumni have gone on to do a lot of things. I've got kids on Broadway.
Wow.
I've got kids on cruise ships. I have kids that are tech directors on cruise ships. Some that are in fashion, some that are in box office sales now. There's one that's working nationally with Broadway across America. And they do, they sing, they dance, they act.
Yeah.
And whatever fit that kid, that child, I try to give them the opportunity to experience, to use that interest. If they were into fashion, then they can help with costumes.
Yeah.
And it's always good. We recruited every year. Every year before school started, of course, there was like a night where the kids and families came to look at the school and all that stuff. And I'd send my drama kids out, and I'd be like, go look for the weirdest looking kids that you can find. The ones that don't fit the cookie cutter image. and talk to them and get them to come see the show. You know, because the kid with, at that time, the kid with purple hair or piercings or whatever that people kind of shied away from, they'd come in and they'd be like incredible technicians or lighting people. They were interested in sound. You know, somebody had a little garage rock group. Well, they'd help with sound. You know, so we adjusted and a lot of observation.
Yeah, that's amazing. So there's really a place for everybody in
There
the theater.
is.
In the theater
There
world,
is.
definitely. As a music director, what specific responsibilities and challenges do you face when bringing a musical production to life?
Yeah, I guess, you know, it sort of depends on how the performers come in, how the artists come in. What is their experience? What have they done before? What I've loved in Madagascar Kids this season at WTP is that some of these students, it's their first ever show. Not just with WTP or not just a musical, but first show ever, first time being on stage. So you really get a range of ability levels, and your job is to get everybody to the finish line in generally the same place. So that's a responsibility and a challenge, especially when working with younger students. You know, you're really helping to shape their love of musical theater. And that's especially what I've loved about doing Madagascar Kids, is that seeing the work that the students have put in, and you know this as assistant director, seeing the work that they put in and the final product and just how excited they are for their next project, that's the best feeling in the world. That is why I do what I do.
I've had a few shows where something either went wrong on stage, or we had to skip, or actors skipped lines and we had to skip some cues, or I made a mistake and so I had to kind of catch up and kind of try to hide my mistake. That's what's so exciting to me about live theater is that, you know, there's no editing, there's no going back. You just have to stay in the moment and be calm, and things will go wrong. Like, everyone's human. So you might make a mistake, an actor might make a mistake, and just to be able to roll with it and kind of just change in the moment and not stress about it too much, and just like the show must go on. I don't know that I have one challenging production that came to mind, but I've had the opportunity to work with adults and I've had the opportunity to work with students here. And at first, when I first started, I thought, I don't want to work with kids. It's going to be too hard. It's going to be too much. But then as I started working here, I was like, I actually love kids, and I love them more than working with adults because the kids just get so much more out of it. So that is really fun. I mean, I have to be a little more on top of things with the kids because they don't always remember their blocking, or sometimes we have more absences than you would in another rehearsal setting, but it's so rewarding in the end that I love it.
It really is. Could you highlight a memorable project or performance that stands out in your career, and what valuable lessons did you learn from that experience? I
have had many valuable experiences. I treasure each and every one of them. From my first really big gig at the Footlight Club, music directing Promises, which for those who know it is a huge show. We had some budget limitations, so I had to not only music direct and play piano for the show, but I had to condense what is, you know, almost a 20-piece orchestration into, you know, a much smaller, maybe 10-piece kit. So going through that score and rearranging and being able to represent all of those instruments so that, you know, the actors on stage are hearing what they've heard in rehearsal and in listening to the score, you know, and it is such a beautiful score. You have to bring the richness of that score while also balancing the fact that you're not on Broadway, you don't have that level of a budget, you have to really make some challenging decisions. But if I have to really highlight a project, and here we are at WTP in the theater here, my first project with WTP was Spring Awakening, which was such a magical experience. Not very often do you get all of sort of the things coming together, the crew, the cast, the creatives, just on the same page from the very beginning. Beautiful lighting design, set design, costume design, students and performers who are in it. From the moment they get in the theater, they are ready for the work, they are ready for the challenges. It is a challenging show, both in the content and what, you know, the performers have to do musically. And I was lucky enough to be able to simply conduct, which is a luxury that not a lot of music directors can have, but really concentrating on making sure that the actors had their cues when they needed to, making sure that strings and guitars and piano, and everybody is coming together because it too is such a beautiful and rich score. Just being able to concentrate on sort of being that leader, getting everybody on the same page, actors and band, was such a magical experience. It's one of the best experiences music directing I've ever had, and that was right here at WTP doing Spring Awakening.
That's great. That's an amazing experience. How do you approach collaborating with other creative professionals, such as directors, choreographers, to ensure a cohesive and impactful musical production?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And one that when I first started music directing, really figuring out that dynamic. When you work with anybody, no matter what field you're in, if you're sort of sharing responsibility for what an end product is going to be, you really have to know, the lens that you're coming from, everybody else's lens. You have to be able to collaborate and consult and sort of that give and take of any kind of working relationship.
Yeah.
I will say that, a lot of times my lens is more, are the singers able to sing? Do I think that I can get them there with what they've been able to show me in auditions and callbacks? But what's so wonderful about WTP is that directors and choreographers, stage managers, all of the folks involved in the production really, have been doing this for a while. So they also have very valuable musical lenses. So I really do rely on, especially in the audition and callback process, what do the other creative team members think? Because that's so important. And the other thing is that, when I was new to WTP and not knowing all of the students here yet, I really had to lean on, Mr. Rush, Miss Julia, some of the other folks who have worked with WTP before, because I didn't have that relationship with any of the students yet. I was new.
Yeah.
So it's really important to sort of know that you're bringing that level of expertise because that's your role, but to also know that everybody else, really has a voice in that process. And it's truly one of the most collaborative things to do is be a director, music director, choreographer, put all of those things together and talk about what does that cast list look like? What does that process look like?
Yeah, definitely. In your role, how do you balance staying true to the original musical score while also infusing creativity and uniqueness into the performances?
Yeah, that's really important too. I think with students, with adults, equity theater, community theater, educational theater, I think when performers are cast in a role, I think the first thing they do, which is understandable, is go to that cast recording. They listen, they prepare for their auditions and callbacks. They've got a role in mind, and that really, really has value because that's sort of like that first step in learning, the musical role that they're going for. But then it's sort of like deprogramming that and getting them back to basics, getting them back to what that composer has intended for them to be singing. And then allowing some level of creativity, allowing for, if it is like a rock-based or a contemporary musical, allowing for those riffs, allowing for that expression, but always coming back to what purpose is this serving? Is this serving a plot purpose? Are we building in a moment and it deserves something like that? Or is it something where you're just trying to show maybe one of your skills, a little flair here and there? We really have to have conversations about that. And that can be difficult because, there are many performers who have done these shows before us, and their recordings and their performances really stand the test of time. I'm thinking of Ellen Green in Little Shop of Horrors. I'm thinking of Patti LuPone in Evita. I'm thinking of all these shows I've done where, those have such value, but really bringing it back to what the composer and the lyricist have intended with the music, what they have written, and building from there. And then the other thing is, during the process, really drawing from the director, the choreographer, the set designer even, the costume designer. Do any of those elements that we've put together, original elements, lend themselves to a musical moment where we can have some of that creativity musically? What's going on the stage at that time? What's going on with your scene partner? And really looking at our moment, that moment in time, and what feels natural. So I love finding those moments, new moments too. Yeah.
Totally. Are there any particular musical scores that hold a special place in your heart? And what about them resonates with you as a musical director?
I will say that the first score that probably comes to mind is Pippin, which is a musical that was written by Stephen Schwartz. I don't know that if I had not, Pippin was the first musical I performed in. I played Theo, who was the young son of Catherine, the female lead. I was a freshman in high school. And all the upperclassmen were some of the more major roles, Pippin, Catherine, leading player, and I really looked up to them because they were professionals for being in high school. They really took it very seriously. They worked very hard.
Yeah.
I truly did look up to them, and I just fell in love with that score. Largely, Theo is not a role that's on stage very much, so I was in the wings waiting for a cue or waiting for something to happen, and I just got to listen. We had a student band. The students, who were under the direction of the band director in the high school were largely the pit members. But then for those instruments that maybe we didn't teach directly in high school, they had contract players come in to sort of flesh out the pit. So it was really a beautiful musical experience. And I just remember standing off stage thinking like, this is amazing. Yeah. The storytelling that's done through the music, through the choreography, the original Fosse choreography. I don't know that it would have been a show that I would have fallen so deeply and madly in love with had I not been involved in it and really built those first theater experience memories, which I'm sure we all have.
Yeah.
But it holds a place right here. I've been in it several times. I've music directed it several times. I just love it. It stands out to me.
I can't pick just one show, but one of the big events in my career, I think, was I decided to write a show.
Wow.
And my first show, it was a one-act play. And when it opened and was there in front of me to think, because English was not one of my better subjects in high school. And I thought I would never have considered myself writing. Yeah. But I wrote a play to fit the kids that were in my program at the time. And not subject matter, but talent-wise, what I had. And it was a nice moment. And that show went on to win first at Nationals.
Wow!
At the Southeastern Theater Conference.
Oh my gosh!
So I was very proud of it.
As a musical director, how do you foster a positive and productive rehearsal environment for the cast and crew, encouraging their creativity and ensuring a successful production?
It's a great question. I actually was talking with our choreographer for Madagascar Kids, Tess Stevens, about this just this morning at our matinee. Because we were talking about our experiences with musical directors. And I think from an early age, I really enjoyed those experiences where the musical directors knew how we were coming in, knew what our experiences were, knew, could we play an instrument, could we read music, were we able to be pushed musically, what was our vocal range, what part of the show would we be singing if we were in the ensemble. So that really stuck with me. These music directors who got to know each of the performers on an individual basis and really kind of tailored their experience to what they were bringing in, what they were bringing to the table. Yeah. I loved that. I've worked with music directors who maybe that's not their style. They'll come in, they have a set amount of things to do, songs to teach. They will teach to everybody. Yeah. And sometimes that means teaching to no one because you are teaching here and your ability level is all over the place. Yeah. I like to infuse a little humor in music direction. I like to make sure that everybody's having fun because if we aren't having fun, it's not going to stick. If you're not building memories and experiences with what you're being taught, then you're not going to be able to recall it as easily. Yeah. And I think really, being an elementary school teacher for the last 15 years or so. I bring that experience with me, and I bring the musical knowledge. So I really like to put those together because that's the way that I was taught at a young age. And again, talking with Miss Tess this morning, that's not every music director, and that's not everyone's experience with a music director. So that's really my style.
I think a stage manager needs to be patient
Yes.
and organized, which are two qualities that I feel like I pretty much embody naturally. I'm pretty calm. I don't freak out in moments of stress, and I like to problem solve and really think through things. And I'm definitely pretty organized. I mean, what other qualities would I say? I would say, organized, patient, thoughtful, attentive. You have to just really pay attention to details and really take good notes.
Yeah. Especially it's a kids show sometimes you're stage managing, so it's hard because sometimes the kids get confused and they go to you and you have all the patience to tell them you're supposed to stand here and then over there.
Exactly.
Yes.
I think the stage manager is a very important component of bringing the whole team together because you have all these elements of production teams. You have your director, choreographer, music director, then you have all your designers, your lighting, scenic, and all of that. And so really making sure that everyone's communicating, taking rehearsal reports, taking notes to make sure everyone knows what they need to do. Here, there's a lot of communication with parents, making sure they know when their kids are supposed to be here, what they need to bring with them, answering their questions. So really just trying to make sure everyone's staying communicated. And if you're not sure, just asking questions, and you can over-communicate because you'd rather do that than let little things fall through the cracks.
Well, I think the director has to have a vision.
Yes.
And they have to stick with that vision.
Yeah.
You have to go into rehearsal from a directorial standpoint. The director has to come in to say, this is what I see, and this is where we're headed. We're going to set this show in the future. We're going to set it in Egypt or Berlin or, Massachusetts, wherever.
Yeah.
And I want to do a period piece, or I want to do this. I want it in the 1800s or the 1900s. What you create, you can create and help with the show with the vision that the director, you're trying to meet that director's vision and make his vision come to life. Also, though, you have to be flexible enough to, if you try something and it doesn't work, to be able to say, maybe I'm wrong. Let's try. Let's go another way. If it's not working, what can I do to change that? Do we scrap all this and just start at zero again? And what's going to be best for the production? And does it all fit in?
Oh, definitely.
When you're the costume designer, are you designing costumes where the actors can do what they need to do in this production? How can you help them and help them communicate with the audience the period, the piece, the message? Can be a color of a dress. If you're a quiet person, why do they have you in a pink neon dress? So subconsciously, we're playing with the audience's mind in productions, and we're leading them down our path where we want them to go and where we want them to, what we want them to have experienced at the end of the evening. And whatever we can do to help that. Music, I love to underscore shows with music, and that can help. If there's a rough spot that it's just it doesn't seem to be working exactly right. A lot of times music can bridge that gap and help set the mood.
Interesting.
When you go see a play and the lights go down and there's music playing, they're starting to get you there already. So that it doesn't happen, the lights come up and then we have to all be sad. If it's a somber, sad piece, we can start with the music.
Definitely,
And the audience can slip away from the office, the problems they had getting there, the late bus, the taxi they wouldn't get on, whatever. And forget about that and kind of go into their own world where everybody, each individual, when they see a production, has a different experience. And so what's going to hit home for you? What are you going to get from this production? The lead may not be the lead in your mind. It may be the person who sat there and didn't say a word. during the whole show, but you love that character, and you saw something in it, that you could relate to, or brought back memories, or just helped to bring the story to life.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for any aspiring musical directors?
Yes. Talk with your music directors. If it's something that you're interested in, if it's something you feel like you want to do, either professionally or even to help support, talk with your musical director. I know that I had some great relationships with the musical directors that I've had. They gave me the opportunity to accompany rehearsals or be in the pit, or to take a breakout group and work through some harmonies, or those little glints of responsibility, those little opportunities here and there culminated in sort of me taking that giant leap and saying, I want to do this. I can do this. I have an ear for it. It's what I'm most passionate about. And yeah, so talk with your music director, and they'll give you the opportunity, because we want more music directors in the world.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much
Welcome.
for being on. Is there anything else that you would like to share?
No, I've just loved my time here at WTP, and I look forward to more productions in the future and working with young Ben Gilman.
Ask, what advice would you have to aspiring directors and actors based off of your own journey and the current state of the theatrical world?
Well, once again, I used to tell my kids, if you can think of anything you would like to do other than this, do it.
Yeah.
Theater has to be what you live for. And it has to be when I say the most important thing in your life, it's not exactly what I mean. Because I'm not talking about personal relationships, but in your life in general, what's going to make you happy, what's going to interest you. Theater's very hard. It's a very hard world to be in.
Yes.
You never know what's coming. And my son-in-law and my daughter are on Broadway. They're Broadway actors. And I've had an opportunity to meet some pretty big name people through them. And I'm always amazed that somebody may be playing a lead on Broadway this year. And then they disappear for 4 or 5 years or 6 years. And it's like, what happened? They won a Tony for that role. There wasn't another show came up that they were right for, roles that you play a role one day, you have to cherish that moment and make the most of it, because it can end tomorrow.
Definitely.
They can close the show. And somebody else may not hire you for a year, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years. And if that's the case, what can you do? You need some type of plan to help you survive. When I retired, I went to New York and I started acting and started going to auditions. And my first audition, I walked in and one of my kids was there, one of my students.
Wow.
And he was like, Mr. Rush? What are you doing here? And I said, I'm your competition.
Oh my gosh.
And there were probably a couple of hundred people there. And I never, after even teaching it for 36 years and talking to kids about going into the professional world, I never realized how hard it was. And, you go to an audition at 6 a.m. to get in line, to get to the audition, and then you stay there, and then maybe by 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening, they'll see you for your 60 seconds, and that's literally 60 seconds, and or one day I had them come in and say, they've seen enough today. They're not seeing anybody else. It's like, we've been sitting here 12 hours, waiting. Sorry, they're not seeing anybody else.
Oh my God.
And you, it's a lot about financing too. You've got to watch how you manage money, because if you're making $10,000 this week, well, that's great, but not if you stop next week and you don't work for 2 years.
Right.
So it's an up and down
Yeah.
ride for an
Definitely.
actor,
Yeah.
and it's got to be, it's got to make you happy and fulfill a need in what you want.
Yes.
Um, And you can't live your life for your parents. So many times, I'd have parents say, "We don't want them to do theater," and I'm like, "Okay, I have no control over that."
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, they're not going to be a lawyer like you are. I know that's not going to happen. So we always wanted our children to be happy.
Yeah.
Whatever made them happy. If it was theater, if not, they didn't have to go into theater.
Yeah.
We never tried to push them any direction. We kind of let them decide on their own.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, it's a hard world.
It is.
It's a hard
Yes,
world.
it is.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. And you have to be ready and willing to leave your family. And that was always a big discussion in my department. If you want to go into theater, do you realize you may not see your family for a year?
Yeah.
Or a year at a time, or 6 months, or you're going to miss Christmas, you're going to miss this, you're going to miss funerals, you're going to miss, because if you're in a show, and there's somebody's wedding, well, chances are you won't be able to get out of the show.
Yeah.
So you're going to miss that. Birthdays, Christmas. Theater is open on Christmas.
Yeah.
Christmas Eve.
Right.
So if you're living in New York and your family lives in Arizona, and you're in a show, well, you're going to be working on those days, so you won't see them.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Definitely. Yeah.
so.
I love that. Yeah, you actually played in the pit for one of the shows I did right in this theater, The Lightning Thief. And you were
Yes.
conducting, you were playing piano, you were doing
Yes.
all of it.
Yes, and it's exciting because as a music director, you get to start from the very beginning with the students, with the cast members, teaching them the music. Then you bring the band in, and you're guiding them and you're teaching them if they don't have experience with the show. So really, like you are in charge of the music. You are there from the beginning, and you are there for each of the performances, literally.
Oh, totally. As a father of Ben Rush, how did your own experiences influence or contribute to his path as the artistic director and co-founder of Wellesley Theater Project?
Oh, well, I'm very proud of him for that. Ben's been a hard worker, and he's always loved theater. And it was, for both my kids, with me teaching, it was sort of like, well, I'm staying after school, so you have to be here. Or your mother and I are in a play, so we're going to rehearsal, so you have to come with us. So they kept getting it put in front of them. So it was hard to imagine that they wouldn't go into some aspect of theater. And my daughter is a performer, and then Ben has this incredible program here.
Yeah, definitely. As well as directing, you also know how to design costumes. Can you walk us through the creative process of designing costumes, especially for the pilot production like Madagascar Kids with Wellesley Theater Project?
Well, with Madagascar, you have the audience comes with a vision. And so Madagascar is the kind of show, and there are lots of shows like this, to where you can't change it.
Mhm.
You know, you have to do it like it's written. You can't do Jersey Boys and set it in the 1800s, you know,
Yeah.
or futuristic.
Yep.
It's set in a period. They look like this. People dress like this.
Yes.
And it's about real people.
Yeah.
With costumes, I would create like a color palette. And sometimes, a lot of times, it was just in my mind that I wanted like earth tones
Yeah.
or bright colors. Children's theater, like Madagascar, one of the first things I learned about children's theater is keep it bright.
Yes.
You know, it
Yeah.
keeps the audience's attention, the little kids, and they're not there to see a tragedy.
Yeah.
You know, they want to be entertained and have
Exactly.
fun.
Yeah.
So bright colors.
Yeah.
Madagascar, having been made into a movie, there's not a lot of flexibility,
Yes.
you know,
Yes. Yeah.
to be able to, costume-wise.
Yeah.
The hippo's got to be a little big. In today's world, though, you walk a thin line of like, are you making fun of people?
Mhm.
You know, so you got to be careful when you create a costume.
Definitely.
What does it say?
Oh yeah.
What does
totally.
it communicate to the audience? What does a hairstyle communicate to the audience?
Yeah.
Jewelry, you know, you have an actor who's very poor,
Yeah.
but you got an actor who wears a lot of rings, and he's like community theater
Yeah.
for say, you know, it's like, oh, I don't take these off. Well, you have to take them off.
Exactly.
Yeah, for this show.
Right.
My girls, I used to fight with this a lot. We would fight, when I say in a good way,
Yeah.
you know, with nails.
Yes.
When nails started becoming popular, it's like you can't have those for the show.
Yeah.
So it got to be in my auditions that I would say on paper, will you change, like, do you know you can't wear nails?
Yeah.
You can't wear polished nails. You can't wear long fingernails. You're going to have to cut your hair or wear a wig.
Yeah.
And boys too. It's like,
Definitely.
boys, if we're doing a period show, the hair's got to be it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to put you in an incredible Victorian costume
Yeah.
and you have steampunk hair or whatever, you know,
Exactly.
because that's what you wear.
Yeah.
So it gets down to decide now before you audition.
Yeah,
Will you
definitely.
cut your hair?
Totally.
And or will you let it grow long?
Yeah. Yeah.
And parents, in my school productions, parents would also have to sign off.
Oh, really?
Yeah, boys will have long hair, so please don't let them cut their hair for the next 4 weeks or 6 weeks.
Wow.
Or coloring. You know, if you bleach girls, if you have highlights or things like that,
Totally.
it's like, you can't have that, or we're going to have to cover it.
Yeah.
You know,
Definitely.
and it's a full vision with costumes. Costumes doesn't stop with the shirt and the pants you wear.
Yeah.
It continues with the shoes, the socks, the tie. Is the tie, you know, ties change. Is it a wide tie? That's a certain period. Thin ties are a certain period.
Yeah.
Men's shoes
Definitely.
have changed. And if you're playing a dignitary, a British dignitary, and you're somewhere where they wear cowboy boots, which my high school was this way, you know, well, you can't wear cowboy boots. You know, I want you in boots. So when you bring your cowboy boots, it's like, no. I need dress boots for this. You said boots, you know. So it's seeing the whole picture.
Well, thank you so much for
Sure.
letting me interview you. Is there anything
nice.
else that you would like to share?
No, I think that's it. Just
No.
enjoy theater
Yes.
and make the most of it. And if people decide they don't want to do theater and they don't want to be on stage, then support theater by attending any kind of theater, local theater that you can find.
Great. Well, thank you so much again.
Sure. Thank you.
Is there anything else that you would like to share?
No, come check out shows at Wellesley Theater Project.
Yes.
We're having so much fun and we have some really great shows coming up. So
Thank you again.
thank you.
Wow. you are amazing.
Well,
you are great.
I learned so much about you.
Great. Hey, that was good.
Okay, that was